Welcome everyone to the Transformation Summit. Together we are wise women and we are rising for embodied change. I am thrilled today to be speaking with Amber Elizabeth Gray, Dr. Amber Elizabeth Gray, in fact. Now she's got the most amazing bio, so it's all below here. So please do have a really good look at all this amazing stuff that she's been doing and has been sharing with the world. It's so brilliant. And what I do want to just tell you about her right now is that she is, in fact, a trailblazer in a lot of body movement therapies and ways of exploring our relationship with our body, dance, movement therapy, somatic psychology, continuum, yoga, other movement arts and therapies. So, she's been really active in that. And there's a lot of other things she's been doing as well. There's just so much, human rights framework, just so much. I'm just looking now and it's just so juicy. So please do have a look. And just welcome Amber today.
Thank you, Allison. I'm delighted to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And what we're talking about, because we're, this is Wise Women Rising for embodied change, not just change, but embodied change. And what we're talking about today is being in body. Delicious. So let's just start off with, why is it important that we be in body?
Because this is where we live. This is where we act from. This is where we feel, sense, perceive. One of the basic principles of many body-based therapies, but I also think body-based practices in general, is that human development is very much a bodily process. It's also, I like to say, it's also a creative process, but we are in a constant interaction as we are forming, and forming is constant. I mean, I'm talking about physical formation, what happens in utero, what happens afterwards, but I think also transpersonal, spiritual, but we're in this constant process, and it's always a dance. It's always an intersection between the external world, the environment that's constantly feeding us or offering us information, and our internal world. So our internal world, I like to call it the inner climate or the inner landscape. It's literally a sea change of movement. It's constant movement. It's rhythm, it's pulsations. And so everything that we bring to the outer world, express however we do, arises from that mix, that melange of things, but really rises from our body. And so a lot of people talk about embodied, and it's a term that has become quite popular. And I think of embody as being very present and aware of our interoceptive or inner processes, as we're thinking, speaking, whatever we're doing. Being embodied to me is really our birthright to be connected to our inner world, our truth, as we move and act in the world. So it's a little bit more political, as am I, having been an activist for many years.
Yeah, I love it. It's all right. And it's not funny. The sad thing is that so many of us become so dissociated from our bodies, and we build up very negative relationships with our bodies. And when we think about, well, for me, for example, often when I'm not a very sporty person, and the idea of going to a gym is like, you'd have to drag me screaming to a gym. That's how I feel about it. And yet there's this constant thing where, oh, I should get fit, I should do this, I should do that. And it's kind of, that's the discourse that seems to be very prevalent in the world about, okay, you want to improve your body, and you want to improve your relationship with your body, well, you've got to get to the gym and do some serious workout. We're talking about something entirely different, an entirely different relationship with our body. So let's talk I'd really appreciate it if you could talk a little bit more about how we can get to know our body, become reacquainted with, what's really happening with us.
That's such an interesting question, Allison. And it's, as I was listening to you, I was thinking of fitness, which isn't what you asked me to talk about, but I'm going to say a little bit about it because during this pandemic, I had as many of us had, sort of a breakthrough realization. And I was observing, one of the first things I did was early March 2020 offered an online, it was a one-off class, and then people kept asking for more. I ended up doing a series, and it's where I started talking about Embody. And I remember thinking, it was actually March 11th of 2020 when before things really, I think before there was any like public announcement of what was about to happen, I was like, this is going to be huge. And I was sitting in my office my refugee clinic in Albuquerque, and I have a nice little courtyard. I was looking out and I was like, what am I going to do? We're going to be stopped in our tracks. We're going to be tested. And I remember asking myself, how fit am I? Am I ready for this? And I sat with my body and I said, okay, do it. You teach your clients this all the time. This is what you preach. So practice this. And I dropped into my body and I just listened, and I found my breath and my heartbeat. And I was just that was it. I was just listening to myself in the moment. I opened my eyes, I looked out the window, and I said, it's really dry. We've had this really bad drought. You better feed the birds. And I went to Birds Unlimited, Wild Birds Unlimited, and set up my courtyard, which is now a beautiful bird garden. I said, I'm going to feed the birds. And I started really to think about fitness. And like a year later, I remember so many people said to me, because I had COVID, I actually have it, I just told you, I just got a positive test yesterday. I was fairly asymptomatic the first time I had it, which was before the vaccines. And I remember so many people saying, with a little bit of curious judgment, gosh, I know, you didn't even get sick. I know a lot of people, and I'm not, this is nothing critical, but they're triathletes. They're really fit people. They work out at the gym all the time, and they're having really major issues. And I said, pushing yourself to physical extremes that actually pushes up against the natural rhythms and constitution and fleshiness of your body might not be fitness. Fitness is our ability to indwell, to be with ourselves, to tolerate ourselves, to listen to ourselves. This is how I breathe. This is my heart rate. Do I need to bring it up? Do I need to bring it down? Do I need to take action? Do I need to calm down? And when we drop in, interoception has also become very popularized, and it's something that I was talking about 20 years ago. It's the information, everything under the skin that arises. Exteroception is what comes in from the outside. So being fit, being in our body, to me means we have the capacity, and capacity is a really important word. In the late 90s, I developed a tool for relational and social capacity when I was in a more clinical setting. It's our capacity, our full-bodied ability to listen to ourselves. We know that the spine is one of the pathways of interoception. It's one of 5. I never remember all 5. The vagus nerve is another. And that's the information that travels from belly brain or dorsal vagus or inside our body under skin up to the brain that becomes part of what we know, our knowledge. In Creole, we have a term, connaissance, which means deep knowing. So being embodied is the only way, I think, to know who we are and to be able to be true to ourselves. I mean, I'm using a very colloquial expression, but how do we be true to ourselves? Very difficult in contexts of oppression and violence and fear-based environments. It's very difficult. And many of those are intentional, in order to keep people from knowing themselves, because when we know ourselves, we're empowered. And if we're empowered, we can't be controlled. So that was a lot. That's why it's important.
Wow. So there's just so much in that, and even words that you you mentioned a word and you said, oh, it's become very popular now. And I thought, oh, I've never heard of it before. So so it's become very familiar to you. Well, it's always been familiar to you, for a
Right.
long time. But no, I don't think that it is, this is the thing. This is
Hmm.
actually key, because
Yes.
again, it's like we can assume that where we are, the knowledge that we have, or the what we're working with, that it's so obvious that
Yeah.
surely other people have got that.
Yeah.
I read recently about people listening to their own heartbeat, and I was desperately trying to think, oh, I wish I could remember more, because it was to do with COVID, or to do with having illness, and it was something along the lines of people who are able to hear their own heartbeat are more able to build up their resistance, or to
Interesting.
do better when they're ill. And I thought, oh, surely everybody can hear their own heartbeat. And it was just crazy to me that what I had assumed was normal, that wasn't necessarily what everybody could do. And I think this is something that is really important in this whole, um, moving into our body, and learning from our body. We've become, as I said earlier, we've become just so unused to doing that, that
Yeah.
it's just, I think most of us don't. And you talk about biointelligence. So what is biointelligence?
Before I answer, I just want to say thank you for pointing out my assumption. Because yes, in my community, I do hear interoception more and more, if that was the word, but thank you for that, because that's, yeah.
So what is interoception? Just tell us what that, I know you said
Intero
it, but say it again.
interoception, it probably has a fancy definition, but it's all the information that comes up from, as I said, underneath the skin. I'm quoting Christine Caldwell there.
Okay.
Um, your sensations, the little rumblings. I'm sitting here at my computer and my stomach keeps persisting and saying, hungry, hungry. That little, there's a moment where it's really delicious, that hunger. And then there's a moment where it's like, ugh. So that's part of our interoception. Those deep felt sense, you're walking around and all of a sudden you just have like, maybe that, I often get like, it's both hot. It's hot and cool at the same time when I'm nervous. That's interoception. It's like, if something happens, you're like, I need to pay attention. So that's what it is.
Okay.
Um,
And is
um,
that the same as biointelligence? Are they the same, or are they slightly
they're,
different?
I mean, they're different words, but they're totally linked. They're totally related. And biointelligence, I'm borrowing from my mentor and beloved friend Emily Conrad, who created Continuum. She talked about biointelligence. I think she coined that term. Um, and she was talking about, the biointelligence of the human being. So um, one of the things that she would often say is the human body is 80% water, exact same percentage as the earth. There must be a reason. Her work, Continuum, is, in order to keep it succinct, it's movement that arises from our 80% fluid nature. That's who we are, flow. Everything that we were talking about before, fitness and everything that you just said. I mean, every now and then I look at what I'm calling society and I go, really? Who said 9 to 5, lunch at noon? Um, yes, I'm grateful we have houses. I'm grateful we're not foraging for food in caves. Shoes are good, in the winter. And we've gone to such an extreme in terms of disconnecting ourselves from the earth world environment that we are part of. We would not be here without the gift of all our evolutionary ancestors. And they crawled and they swam and they oozed. So our biointelligence is the memory. It's the way all of that is still reflected in our movement. Um, we can go to the gym and do this. I can pick up a pen because I need to write. We need the functional movement, but we also move, as I said, a sea change of movement. There's a pulsation, there's an expansion. We also move very fluidly. So biointelligence very much relates to interoception. It's the wisdom that we carry from ages of evolution. And because, for whatever reason, we live in these bodies. I believe that it's that spirit indwells. I believe in a spirit. Not everybody does. So I could ask the question, well, why is this the container? How did this end up being my container? So biointelligence bows to that. It's that we have this ability to sit, to stand, to rise, to fall, to open. All of that is part of our biointelligence. And it's not just to turn on the car or change diapers. Those are important, but it's about creativity and innovation. It's about continuing evolution forward towards whatever, whatever potential there is. So I would also say biointelligence is our potential. It's recognizing that this is a nonstop experimental laboratory, and there's so much more that we can do, think, feel, sense than we often do because of the constructs of society.
Yes, yes. So, so my obvious question is, how do we unhook those constraints and structures of society so that we can actually become more aware of the intelligence of our body?
I think any somatic practice, there's so many offerings now, but I think, Continuum, which is one of many that I practice, but it's one that I think is particularly, it was created in the laboratory of Emily's body to serve this inquiry of what biointelligence is and how we can become it. Tai Chi, yoga, and I don't know about beer yoga, which I once witnessed a class. There's beer yoga and some of the, I don't know, other yogas that are a little bit more, have gotten a little more, I don't even know what to say, like the way yoga has been transformed in the West, but some of the practices that hail from Eastern countries, from Asia, a lot of those practices, studying with somebody who really knows them, taking a walk. When I was a little girl, and I wonder how many of us did this, one of my favorite things to do was to go outside and look at a patch of grass. And it could be, it probably was this big, but it was an entire universe because I'd see who marched through it, what little bugs, frogs, whatever, worms. That kind of awareness, when we just sit in nature, take a contemplative walk or just take a walk. But as you're taking a walk, noticing, taking a moment to stop. Do you smell something? Do you see something? I think that's a powerful way. And, certain sports, I am a snowboarder. I love to snowboard. And it's part of society, but it's also, there's times where when I'm turning the board and I can hear that sound on the snow. And I can tell the consistency of the snow from the sound of the board. And I just feel the way my hips turn, being in touch with our body when we're moving, especially in a natural element. I swam the other day and I could feel, my tissue expanding and, coming back, but it wasn't like this kind of, it was this jellyfish, like every time I took a stroke, and I just stayed with that. So those kind of practices will bring us to our body. And when we're there, we're there. You don't have to do much because there's so much wisdom there.
Yes. Yeah. So many ways. And, what I really appreciate about what you just said is that we don't have to make it complicated for ourselves to do this. And the very notion that it could be complicated or that putting those shoulds in seems to be part of that external construction of society. And I think we need to be very, this is just an aside really, I think, it's very easy to dichotomize the two, like,
yes,
the truth of me here and my physical body and the society around me is preventing me from having this great relationship. But we're part of society. We are, it's much more fluid and fluid, again, that word. And it can be easy. And like you said, it is our right to actually and our choice to actually move into that space.
Absolutely.
So I wonder, how does this different relationship that is possible for us with our body, how does this help us navigate these times of uncertainty, or navigate these times of potential turmoil, and also, you know, our contribution to co-creating something different in the world.
Well, I mentioned before that connecting to interoception, you know, knowing the truth of who we are, and that can be empowering. And that's another term that gets used a lot in a lot of different contexts. But I think that, you know, everything that I already said about that is really helpful because it helps us stay strong. It actually helps us stay strong. And I'm going to use the word grounded, connected, whatever that means for us. Um, and then I think we can make less fear-based and more truth-based or love-based choices, which are really important in these times.
Mm.
I also think, you know, and I've always been very interested in ritual, and through some of my medicine or spiritual teachers through my life have been able to, excuse me, have had access to some beautiful practices that include rituals and ceremony. And I think those are really important too. And that was what I taught a lot about in the very beginning of the pandemic. And there's, you know, there's very elaborate rituals like funerals in certain places, or weddings, or you know, many kinds of rituals. There's also getting up and sitting for 10 minutes before we allow ourselves to get busy. Or one that still, I mean, I started after my recognition of my relationship to the birds in my office. Every morning, I'm very blessed. We have a little hot tub outside here, and I sit in it with my cup of tea or coffee, and I watch which birds come. And that's my morning ritual. And I miss it when I can't do it. I couldn't do it when I was caretaking my mother last year. But I adapted it. She apartment building and assisted living. She was up 3 floors, so we couldn't have a bird feeder. So very cheekily, I would put bird seed on the windowsill, and the birds would come there. And my mom, I'd get her into the chair, and we'd sit together and watch the birds and have our morning coffee. So anything that we can do to pause. I mean, a ritual is really a mindful pause where we pay attention to what's going on. I think that creates a rest state. And it's really important because there's so much coming at us, and there's so much action demanded of us, or inaction. If, you know, I actually technically my quarantine ends today, even though I just found out yesterday. I had a COVID positive test. I feel fine. You know, the quarantine is shorter, but having quarantined last year, you know, then there's also this inaction where we're like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck, things like that, or we can't move forward. When are we going to go back to everybody be in school, whatever it is? So there's this tension between how much is coming at us and the demands, and then sometimes feeling like we're just stopped in our tracks.
Yeah.
And so finding nourishing pauses that create rest. Rest is, you know, neuroplasticity, which a lot of people have become more familiar with. People focus on how experience changes the brain. It doesn't become part of us. The neural pathway doesn't become one of ours until we rest. That's when it gets cemented, to use a not so good word. Or so I think those nourishing rest moments, and I've learned to do them on the spot, riding an airplane, being in a convoy, sometimes being in an armed convoy when I'm working and things are really intense. 3 seconds of, I just felt my exhale. This is my skin. There's sand out there. It centers us. Center's a really important word. It's about centering ourselves. And so I think anything that centers us, grounds us, is really, really important. There's going to be a lot of invitations and demands of what to do. And I think it's important that we only do what we can do with integrity and wholeness. Again, listening to our body. Does our body say, yeah, that's what we should be doing?
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And so, you know, I'm just thinking, oh yes, I totally am on the same page as you. There is so much being thrown at us. I used to live many years ago. I lived in London, in the UK, and I felt so I lived there for a long time and I loved it, but I felt so overwhelmed by the amount of information that was
Yeah.
being bombarded. I was being bombarded with all the time. And I live in the countryside now, and it took me a long time to really just move into that different way of being, that more connected, that more aware of my body relationship with the earth, with nature, with the birds, like you're saying, with the sky, with all of these things. And so, I really, really appreciate that. And at the same time, because, particularly because of social media, we are bombarded all the time. And those of us who work online, it can be
Yeah.
a very intense sort of relationship with what comes out of our devices, out of our computer. And we can just spend our day just sitting very
Yes.
passively and going into our head and forgetting again about um, the being in body. And so what you're saying there is just so relevant to us. I mean, it's relevant to us all, but us
Yeah.
here together in this summit, it is so relevant to us.
Absolutely. It's, and I was just thinking some of the questions you had sent me, that's where our power comes from. And I'm actually remembering, I'm a dog lover, and I rescue dogs. So we always tend to have male dogs. We had one female dog from 2016 to 17, Osa Little Bear Kramer. My husband Carl had to put Kramer on there because he loves Cosmo Kramer from Friends. Anyways, Osa, she looked like a little bear. She was one of these mixes. She just looked like a tiny bear. She's the one who taught me. Because I can sit here for a long time. I got to answer emails, all of that. And she would come in, and it wasn't just she would trot in here. She'd come in and she'd go, "Hurr, hurr, hurr," and her whole body would wiggle. And she'd throw something down, and she'd make me get up and go play. And she was my teacher. And now I do that. I don't have Osa anymore. I have Maxie and Bodhi. And they're a little bit less demanding in that way, but I still, and my husband and I actually remind each other. He'll come and say, you need to get up and go move, and I'll say, honey, you've been at the computer all morning, get up and do something. And it isn't just sit for 3 hours and go take a really long hike. It's get up every 30 or 60 minutes. It also makes us smarter. Anytime we get up and move, change posture. This is something I learned from my friend Steve Porges. It promotes vagal tone. Vagal tone is that scientific measure of I like to call it our wholeness. Our body is moving towards that enough of a sense of safety. It might not be totally safe. So we're getting more in tune with ourselves. That allows us to move in the world freely, volitionally, the way that we want to move with sovereignty. Vagal tone is promoted anytime we change posture. So it makes us more engaged, more ourselves. And I think it also makes us smarter because, again, interoception, 80% of the information that travels to our brain is body up. So we get up and move, and that's going to change things. There's going to be more of that flow. And so we get smarter.
And just picking up on your story, I mean, I loved what you just said, but picking up on your example of your little dogs, we have allies around us, and the birds and the dogs are two allies that you've spoken about here. I mean, your husband too, but the ones that we might not even think of as
Right.
allies.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When I'm working with my clients who have suffered exposure to war and political torture and the things, I mean, the genocide, anytime there's a bird or a butterfly, I'm in New Mexico for 1 year. There was a little roadrunner that used to pop up in that courtyard and look and, do this. I'd always say to my clients, oh, we're getting some help. And I would ask them, and they'd smile, and they might have thought I was a little nutty, but a lot of times I'd say, what do you think that's, what do you think that's is? Who do you think that is? And a lot of my clients love birds as well. So we would, there might be a meaning or, a metaphor, and that can be really potent. Those are things that are very potent when we're navigating troubled times. So.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, there's so many more things we could explore here. I know we've just touched on the tip of the iceberg, and I've got a gazillion amount of things, that I'd love to explore with you. especially the work you do with human rights and things like that. So maybe that's for another time. But
Yeah.
right now, people will want to know, okay, they want to know more about you. They want to find out, what's possible with you, and you've got some gifts for them. So would you like to say a few words about those?
Yes. So first, the free gift. I wanted to think of something that wasn't that I hadn't done before. So what I'm going to do, and this will be, I'll actually work on scheduling with you, Allison. I'll get a sense of everybody's time zone, but I'm going to offer, a one-time free introduction to Continuum, because it is a practice that it's beloved for me, and it has been one of the most powerful practices. I think we mentioned my husband. My husband noticed a difference in my responsiveness when I went out in the field and conflict zones and disasters and came back once I started practicing it. So it's a really nourishing, protective, biointelligent practice. So I haven't scheduled it yet, but I want to just get a sense of a good time and offering. So that will be offered, and it'll be my website, ambergray.com. There will be a link to sign up for it. And the thing that you can purchase, in talking with a friend, I've actually decided to offer a t-shirt, and it hasn't been, we're actually working on it now, because I say a lot of cheeky things, and this, my colleague said, it would be really interesting for you to have a t-shirt. So the one we're playing with now, and I alluded to this, but I didn't say it, is free your butt, your heart will follow. What I just talked about with vagal tone is part of it, but that 80% of information that travels belly up, one of the pathways of interoception is the spine. What's the base of our spine? It's our tail, which has been submerged through evolution. I'm not quite sure why. And the sacrum, which is fused vertebra. The more we free our lower spine, we're definitely more intelligent because there's more information traveling up, but it also opens our heart. There's a wonderful, I was taught it as a Chinese proverb that said something about, I'm not going to say it exactly, but if you keep the hips still, the heart suffocates. So there's an ancient connection between the heart and the belly and the sacrum. So that, and I might come up with a few others. So I don't have the details yet, but will. And so I think the more we wear these messages, we're going to invite other people to embody.
Great. And because we're recording this, but this is going out and they will be ready then. So as you're watching now, they are ready. The links are below for both of these things. So if this is speaking to you, you know that. So go and explore it. Now is the moment to do that. And I know that I'm really interested in the t-shirts. I think that that's amazing, and what you've just shared. So I want to say a massive thank you to you, Amber, for coming and sharing this, albeit just like skimming the surface on something that is so full of potential. But thank you so much for coming and talking about it with us.
Thank you for inviting me, Allison. It's really, really lovely invitation, and I'm really grateful to know you now.
Yeah,
spend some time with you a little bit.
And everyone, who's watching this, we love to know, what's coming up for you as you listen to us talking, and as you're sort of feeling into this information, this wisdom, connecting it to your body, knowing, what's coming up for you. If you would like to share that with us, please do. Please just send a reply to any of the emails for the summit. You can say it's for Amber's interview, and just let me know. Anything that you pass to me, I will pass on to Amber as well, so she gets that information. And it's true, we let's connect, let's really let's hear from you, so that we know how this is touching you. It really does mean a lot to us. So if you're feeling inclined, we love to hear from you. Everyone, thank you for joining us, and a final massive thank you to you, Amber, for coming today and sharing this. And I hope you get well soon.
Yeah, I feel great. So Thank you.